seen the other members of Austrian Parliament as well as the youth representatives. We don't want to lose too much time at the beginning of our meeting, so we'd better get started in just a few minutes. Thank you.
Ja, mit
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we can now get started 10 minutes after 2 o'clock. A little bit of a delay. So, 1 German, 2 English, 3 French. Those are the channels. Dear colleagues, I would like to welcome you most cordially in Vienna. Thanks for coming to Vienna. I'm very happy to have this conference together with young people from the Western Balkans. And of course, we also have some youth representatives from Austria. And I'm now going to continue speaking in German, says the speaker. It's easier for me to speak German, and it's also easier for you, probably, listening to me speak French. All right. My colleague's the chairperson of the European Affairs Committee. Well, her French is perfect, and her German is her mother tongue, so she's quite proficient in multiple languages. It's great to have a common language here as far as the future of Europe is concerned. Now, we've come here together because this is one of the events within the framework of the Conference on the Future of Europe. It's a conference that was launched in Strasbourg, and in April 2022, it will most likely come to an end, this process of events. We've already had 2 plenary meetings. The last plenary meeting on the Future Conference took place last Saturday, and first specific results have already come in, the youth events. Now, in Austria, we've come up with a so-called democracy workshop project. So we have invited young people, members of parliament, take some time to delve into the subject matter with young people. This is not unusual for us. Over the past 10 years, or more than 10 years, we've had more than 100,000 young people that we've reached out to. We started off with the topic of democracy, and young people in Austria said that they would be very much interested in the following. They would like everyone to be able to cast their vote when they're 16. Now, our societies in Europe are aging, so if we want to give youth a voice, we have to also give them the opportunity to cast their votes. So we're going to continue this series of conferences. A colleague of mine who works for the Social Democratic Group will be in charge of the next meeting. Mr. Sheriak will be the sponsor of the meeting. After that, he is a representative of the Liberal Party, NEOS, and we also have a representative from the Green Party as well as a representative from the Freedom Party group. So all the parliamentary groups represented in the Austrian Parliament will act as sponsors. Now, this meeting is a special one indeed. Today's conference deals with a subject that is quite complex, the accession perspective of the Western Balkan countries. We've invited young people with the help of ambassadors. Let me pay tribute to the ambassadors. Thank you very much. All the ambassadors are also represented here, or their deputies, and we have young people from all the countries of the Western Balkans who live in Austria, who study in Austria. I've already talked to some of them. Some want to stay here, some want to go back to their home countries, and this brings me to the subject proper. We would like to single out 3 issues this afternoon. Now, I've been able to observe elections in all the countries belonging to the Western Balkans. I chaired a mission together with Seren Moborn, a French colleague in North Macedonia, when we observed the presidential elections, as well as in Montenegro. So I've been in all those countries as an election observer. And there is one issue, one problem that I've experienced. A lot of young people turn their backs on their home countries because they see too few perspectives. And we would like to hear from you what needs to happen to avoid this brain drain. We don't want young people to turn their backs on their home countries. It tends to be young people who are the most dynamic members of society. And of course, the Western Balkans also needs a certain dynamic development. So that's one issue. And then the other issue, now as far as your national governments go, what are their main challenges that they need to face? And the third issue, what do you expect from us? What do you expect from Europe? Now, of course, we don't want to interrupt you in this. We want to listen as much as possible as politicians. Often, we're told that we can't listen, but we are actually able to listen. So we're not going to interfere here because we're going to listen to you, and then you will get answers from us. The French Parliament is represented here. I would like to thank the chairperson of the French Parliament. 5 groups are represented here. We also have 5 groups represented here on the Austrian side, and you will get feedback, and you will get answers to your questions from all the parties represented here. All right, what we would like to do this afternoon is the following. We would like to touch on many issues, and there will also be a live streaming, by the way, so you can click on the website of the Austrian Parliament and you can watch this live. We also have a multilingual platform affiliated with the Conference on the Future of Europe, so there will be a feed going from this meeting to the platform. And during the plenary meetings, of course, we'll touch on these issues. And I report regularly about activities, such as last time when we talked about reducing the election age to 16. So when it comes to the plenary and the committee meetings, I will, of course, also convey ideas that you voiced here and have them discussed in the Austrian Parliament. So we'll start off with the 3 main issues. By 3:30 at the latest, we're going to put an end to this session. This will be followed by a short break, because it's also important, of course, to network over a cup of coffee, for example, and at 4 o'clock, we'll start giving answers to your questions. Please be brief. Don't speak more than 3 minutes, and if you're very long, if you speak for a very long time, I'm going to interrupt you. And the same, of course, also goes for the other members of Parliament. Why don't you speak for 5 minutes each? And the chair of the European Affairs Committee of the Assemblée Nationale will then make her closing comments. Sabine Thier. All right, so much for housekeeping matters. Now, whoever wants to take the floor is asked to put up your sign with your name, because this is easier for me to spot. You know, if you want to take the floor, why don't you put up your sign? All right, why don't we get started? It's always quite difficult, of course, to get the ball rolling and to be the icebreaker, so to speak. So why don't I give the floor to you? Well, how do you perceive the situation facing young people in your countries? Feel free to also tell us where you come from. You don't have to. Seating arrangements are by alphabetical order, by the way. After all, we like to focus on commonalities, common issues, and that's Europe. So it's not really important what your national affiliation is, even though, of course, it's quite important for each and every one of us where they come from. And nation states, of course, will continue to be important for the European Union, even though the European Union wants to speak with a single voice. Well, following this event, feel free to stay here, and here we will enjoy a few drinks, and we'll continue our informal discussions. Well, just by way of information, as members of Parliament, as politicians, we're going to have a debriefing. The 2 European Affairs committees, our 2 committees will meet with the colleagues of the European Affairs Committee of Assemblée Nationale. So we will follow up on the results achieved here. All right. This brings me almost to the end of my short introductory comments. How do you perceive the status quo of young people? Why are you here in Austria? Many people who want to go abroad and study abroad, well, at the beginning, of course, they want to go back to their home countries, but then oftentimes they stay where they are, abroad. abroad, that is to say. So how do you perceive the situation of young people in your home countries? Who would like to get the ball rolling? Who would like to be the icebreaker of sorts? Great, great. Yeah, okay, please leave the sign as it is so that we know who you are. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Yeah. So I'll talk in English, but like this. Hi, I'm Rina Halimi. I come from North Macedonia. And regarding the first, I will conclude the whole questions. So as mentioned before...
Sorry, please, let us discuss at the beginning only the first question.
Okay, the first
I want to have,
Okay,
yeah, thank
sure.
you.
As mentioned before, the Western Balkans has been in political upheaval for the last 30 years, and young people see the EU as an opportunity for better jobs, as potential to advance themselves in the career and also to get better education. And some of them even stay here and don't go back to their countries, which I think is by no means a good sign for Western Balkans. Therefore, I think the European Union has to further help the Western Balkans to open the negotiations of the EU enlargement for the Western Balkans and fight the corruption in those countries, help them fight the corruption in countries in Western Balkans, fight the organized crime in the region, enhance the rule of law, and contribute on increasing employment for the younger generation. But without letting the talks and negotiations proceed, the Western Balkans is losing hope and getting demotivated to further develop their own countries. So take, for example, Albania and North Macedonia, which both countries have proceeded a lot with their own main goal to join the EU. And North Macedonia has also changed the name because of it, and kind of like EU has kind of given a knockback. So yeah, these are my points. Thank you.
Vielen Dank.
All right, thank you very much. Who would like to go next? After the colleague from North Macedonia? Yes, it's up to you.
My name is Stepanovic. I am from Montenegro. First of all, I want to thank the EU Parliament, Parliament of France, and especially Austrian Parliament as the hosts of this amazing event. It feels great to finally get a chance to be heard and listened to. I think, as many of my friends, colleagues from this event, we've all come here to study, to further our education. We've come here for more chances in life and for a better future. Some of us to come back and further the knowledge back home. Some of us are going to stay here. I think that one of the things that young people, I can speak in case of Montenegro, the reason why they are coming to European Union is actually, like I said, for a better life, for a chance for a better life, for a chance to expand the views, learn something new, and just be surrounded by a different culture. I think that one of the things that EU can probably do more in Western Balkan, not only in Montenegro, but in all of them, is their presence. I think that by educating the young people, young population back home, I think they can do great things and can do a lot more and get results so much faster if we just be educated and become more and have more knowledge on the topics such as EU and all of the things and negotiations that are going in the whole process of joining the EU. Thank you.
Vielen Dank.
All right, thank you very much. Who would like to go next? It works very well, I can see. Yes, please introduce yourself.
Yeah. So hi everyone, I'm Boradika. I come from Albania. I'm a student here and I'm also doing an internship at the OSCE Secretariat. So I would want to just add more for my colleagues, just another aspect of why the youth, especially from Albania, are traveling to other countries to pursue their education. I think a very important thing is that they're kind of disappointed from their countries. Personally, I knew that if I really wanted to be successful in my career, have a very long-lasting career in diplomacy, international relations, I knew that I could never do that in my country because their organizations are corrupt, and not only, their institutions are not evolved enough to actually open the doors to youngsters and provide means for them to have a very long-lasting career. So I think that one issue that we can tackle today in the discussion is the disappointment from our countries when it comes to supporting the youngsters for their dreams, which the European Union does very beautifully. That's why we're all here. And yeah, so we can discuss more on how to make that better for our countries and how the EU can help the country develop more ways for the people to not be disappointed from their countries and also to have more means to flourish their careers. Thank you.
My thanks go to the Albanian colleague. Next person, please.
Okay, my name is Cristina and I come also from Montenegro, and I would like to thank all of you. My colleague Philip already thanked the organizers, but I would like to thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak up, because it's really nice that we finally have the opportunity as a youth to share our ideas. And I would have a concrete problem and a possible concrete solution for the brain drain and living of the youngsters from the Western Balkan. So when I moved here, I also moved for studying. I saw that students here have the opportunity to study and to work simultaneously, and that is a great way to support themselves. So they don't need to have some starting capital in order to finance their studies. And that is not the case in Montenegro, and I'm not sure if that's the case in the other countries of the Western Balkan. But in Montenegro, we have a tertiary educational system, such as that all the lectures are obligatory and the students have to be present the whole day, so they don't have time to work. So if we would look up to the countries of the EU where the system is different, and if we could rearrange our educational system a bit, then I think it would be a great solution to shrink, if not completely stop the brain drain from our countries. And if we would look up, we would also need the support from EU, like the experts to come to teach us how to do that. That would be all. Thank you.
Thank you. I come from Kosovo. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to thank you very much on behalf of the Republic of Kosovo. Thank you very much for this event. It's an honor for me to participate in this important discussion as a young person. Now, Kosovo is Europe's youngest country, and it also has the youngest population overall. 75% of our population are 35 years or younger, and you have a sizable portion of that who's actually younger than 25. Now, we have a focus on our IT industry because our people know how to deal with new technology. So there's a great deal of potential tapped that Kosovo could tap into. Of course, European businesses would then also be in a position to outsource their services to Kosovo. It's very important for the Western Balkan countries to accede to EU funding. Funding is very important to finance a variety of projects. And that, of course, has a direct impact on the citizens living in our countries. The population would therefore find better jobs. And this would make it possible for the young people to tap into their potential fully. Young people would no longer deem it necessary to move to EU member countries to live there. And this would then bring down unemployment rates in Kosovo. This would then entail economic stability for citizens and the country at large. Now, the Western Balkan countries, of course, are an integral part of Europe, but many people living there feel excluded or marginalized, especially Kosovo, whose citizens find it pretty hard to travel to EU countries. Visa liberalization, even though we have complied with all criteria, has not come to pass. A visa liberalization for Kosovo would be an important means to stop the brain drain. So we should establish programs such as Erasmus or internships in EU member countries that would also counter the brain drain that we experience in the Western Balkans. This would help young people learn more about the culture of work in Europe at large. Now, building communicative bridges between the EU and the Western Balkan states, well, that is very important. And projects like this would make it possible to achieve a lot of results. And then, of course, people could learn from each other. Kosovo is part of Europe and has to be treated as such, which means that the steps taken by the EU with regards to Kosovo's integration, well, each and every step is a step in the right direction. Kosovo has a lot of untapped potential. It offers a value added for the EU. Thank you. Thank you very much for the specific items that you have raised here. Well, you talked about education, you talked about building bridges, you talked about things to be done in your country, and you also talked about creating opportunities. And what you've said is quite important. Communication, establishing contacts between the local population and those that already live in the European Union, that is very important. But why don't we now slowly move to the second item? So why don't you tell us, because in this area too, the European Union can help you, even though there might still be a few things to be said with regards to the brain drain. I don't want to interrupt anyone. Well, obviously, there is someone who would like to take the floor on the brain drain issue, and then we'll move on to the second set of issues. And we have to be quite frank. There are concerns that we feel. Where do you see the main problems? Corruption has already been mentioned as a major issue, but this, of course, will not be the only issue, the only problem. As far as your countries, your national governments are concerned, well, I know that they face a number of issues. And after that, we'll talk about the third issue, meaning what do you expect European countries to do, especially Austria and France. And with this, I would like to hand over to you on the first set of issues, please.
Ich bin Nevena Miletić, komme aus.
Yes, hello, my name is Nevena Miletić. I'm from Serbia and I'll be brief. Companies from the European Union could use their contacts, the cultural knowledge and the academic know-how of students, meaning students from the Western Balkans who decided to go to European universities. This is a bridging function they could use, and that would be beneficial for both sides. Companies could therefore gain access to new markets without having to face all the unknown issues of a new country. This would strengthen the economy, and the young people who have come to the European Union to study could take on new important functions while at the same time being encouraged to go back to their home countries for work. And let me just add that in Serbia we don't have that many jobs. Thank you very much. I hope the next speaker is from Bosnia-Herzegovina, because then all our countries from the Western Balkans would have taken the floor. You have the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Fisnik. I come from the Republic of Kosovo. I'll begin by thanking the hosts for this opportunity to exchange our approaches on some very important issues that our compatriots, our young compatriots in West Balkans, but also we face regarding the EU matters. In my opinion, if we want to discuss about a problem such as immigration, we have to start with the underlying cause. And it is also during the workshop beforehand that we discussed that the main reason, and not only for the immigration to the EU, but in general, is that people search for a better life. And while during the 90s, it was the war that caused the worst life in the West Balkans and therefore the better life in the EU, the recent migrant crisis was mainly driven and caused by the poorer quality of life, especially unemployment, bad education, healthcare, and in some cases, the justice system as well. These are things which my country's youth deals with on a daily basis, and one of them, education, is the reason why I am here, why I decided to leave my country. I think that in education lies one of the most strategic points of the European Union's quest to fully integrate West Balkans in itself. I think that harmonizing the educational systems is a very sustainable way to raise generations which have less intellectual and cultural boundaries between themselves, regardless of the geographic ones. Our youngsters in Kosovo, but also in general in the West Balkan, are very passionate and bright, and most of them have completed education in fields that are actually demanded in the European Union market. But the problem is that they often, more often than not, have to undergo the hassle of verifying their diplomas or taking extra examinations, or in some extreme cases, beginning their studies once more so that they can verify. They always have to verify, to do something extra to verify their knowledge, which I think is not just. Given that Kosovo is not yet a member of the European Union, I believe that European Union institutions and institutions of the European member states have to begin and strengthen the cooperation with Kosovo institutions, specifically when it comes to harmonizing the curricula, because there were some attempts during the last years, and in my opinion, they weren't that successful, because the EU did not also monitor the implementation of them. Another point I would like to briefly discuss is the healthcare system, and it is true that in Kosovo, but also in the other West Balkan countries, the healthcare model did not produce decent healthcare, but rather provided healthcare according to the socioeconomic status, and I think that is wrong too. And the fragilities of the whole healthcare system, we became aware of them mostly during the last pandemic crisis, the ongoing pandemic crisis, where we could see influence of other big powers regarding this delicate matter, and they somehow noticed the lack of flexibility from the European Union side to help and fully include West Balkan countries. And that's why I think that including all the West Balkan countries, at least in the emergency management structures, would be a very important step to guaranteeing healthcare as a basic human right to all its people, but also stopping let's say, bad influences. This is just my perspective on two important issues, which we also discussed during the workshop. And I'm very alone. Us discussing here about these topics makes me happy at the end of the day, but I think there's a lot of more work to do. Thank you very much.
Vielen Dank auch für diese Wortmeldung.
Thank you very much also for this contribution. Are there any additional contributions, maybe from someone from Bosnia and Herzegovina? I see that behind me there's someone from the Austrian youth representation. Thank you very much, and thank you also for inviting us. I am representing the Austrian Youth Council, but I have a migration background, and that's Bosnia, so of course I have to take the floor also with regard to Bosnia. I think the situation in all countries of the Western Balkans is very difficult, which is understandable, which can be found in its history. We have a war that marked us not so long ago, and young people still suffer from this. I'm afraid that the West has not done enough to come to terms with this. If you look at the structure of Bosnia and Herzegovina based on the Dayton Peace Agreement, which was agreed during war times in order to make the war end, but things just don't work nowadays, so we need systematic changes. It cannot be the case that I have many relatives from Bosnia who have moved to Austria, for example. It's not that much fun to move to a foreign country. It's rather because people don't see a future in their own country. People learn another language, go abroad because they don't have any chances at home. Chances and opportunities that have been mentioned by many colleagues here. The fact that we have problems with the rule of law, corruption, etc. I think what's important is to see where the crux of the problem is. In the beginning you said young people are dynamic. The Western Balkans need a young dynamic, but you also have to give young people in the Western Balkans a chance to be dynamic. We don't have any time to lose. The European Union can offer great things to their young people, and we don't have those chances in the Western Balkans. And unless we see where the real problems come from, we cannot solve this problem. Thank you. Thank you very much also for this contribution from both Austrian and Bosnian perspective. There's another young colleague who is asking for the floor. Please.
First, I would also like to express my gratitude for inviting us here today and allowing us to say what we think about these situations. And while the immigration of young people
Sorry, from where are you?
I'm sorry. My name is Katarina. I come from Montenegro as well as my other colleagues. So while the immigration of young people is an actual issue, I consider that the biggest issue is actually immigration of highly educated young people from Montenegro. So let's call it that, called the brain drain. The brain drain has also been a long-lasting issue in Montenegro. However, very little has been actually done to motivate young people to either stay in the Balkans or to move back from foreign countries. Oftentimes we hear the rhetoric of guilt where those young people who have already left are being pointed at and blamed for leaving. I don't think that we should actually blame them or point our fingers at them. Everyone should actually enjoy their right to move and stay wherever they want to live. Instead, what we can do is push the governments of our countries, all the Western Balkan countries, to design and implement certain brain circulation strategies. So not just see how we can prevent people from leaving. Okay, let's see how we can somehow push the people who have already left to come back. What I think that the EU can actually do is help the governments of those states, as well as different organizations and individuals, to advocate more energetically for the people who have already left and for the creation of those brain circulation strategies. Usually the governments tend to focus on that brain drain instead of, as I said, the brain circulation. So we need to ensure that these strategies and policies actually exist. And the second, we need to ensure that they are need-based, based on the people who have left, because they already know why they left, and they have, I think, the biggest input into what the actual problems are. So I think the EU can help in those cases, both financially and with expertise. They can help properly design and implement those strategies into our countries. Thank you.
Vielen Dank. Vielleicht können wir jetzt lang.
Thank you very much. Maybe we can now really change and move on to the second topic, but there was one more request for the floor, and I would now, as I said, like to move on to the second topic. What are the three main challenges you see in your own home country? We start with the one colleague to my right and then move on to another colleague. Borodika is the name.
I'm from Montenegro, and regarding the second question, what are the main challenges facing our countries? on the way to European Union. Well, it's quite a big topic, and I think it can be addressed properly in 3 minutes. But I would say that the main issues that our countries are facing, and I can speak with certainty for Montenegro, is that we definitely have a high problem of corruption, organized crime, very weak rule of law, and also in the last years there is still a high rise of nationalism and very high polarization of the society. We have in Montenegro at least the situation where the society is completely divided. We have camps like enemies, allies, there's no middle ground. The compromise is missing, and the dialogue is also direly needed. So those are the things that have to be addressed. But of course, we can also agree that probably the socioeconomic issues are the ones that everyone would say is the first problem they're facing. And then we come to the employment issue. We need to have more jobs, more working positions. But beside making our economies so that we can produce more jobs, we have to also make the job opportunities equal for all. That means that everyone has to be equal when applying for a job and has an equal chance. Nowadays, unfortunately, we have a lot of situations where some other criteria is used for employment, like considering party affiliation, nationality, language, religions, which are taken into consideration when applying for a job. And that is also what's quite depressing for young people, because you see, you have all the qualifications for a certain position, but you can't apply because someone else has maybe better contacts or has some maybe has a party connection or something like that. Then you don't have a job, and one of the basic things a human being needs is to take care of himself, to earn, to just be able to take care of himself. And then he decides, okay, why should I go to European Union? They're offering me better chances, and I can feel more protected there as an individual than in my own country. So we need to work a lot on the equal chances for everyone, to remodel our economic systems, because I personally think our whole economic systems are quite dysfunctional. Especially in Montenegro, we are quite dependent on one field of economy, in our case, tourism. And we have seen in the times of pandemic, tourism is quite prone to risks. And then we need to diversify our economy. We need to invest in other aspects of economy. But a very important thing that is often ignored in the whole discourse about the future of the Western Balkans and EU in general is the sustainable energy, the development, the green energy, because everything in every aspect of the economy in the Western Balkans mostly ignores the green energy. And of course, we can speak about the perspectives of our countries, the process of European integration. But if we don't have a sustainable economy, if we don't take care about our environment, then we won't have. All other problems will be minor to that. But of course, someone would say, okay, why should I worry now about environment when I can have a job? I have more pressing issues. But that's the whole point, to remodel the economy in a sustainable, green way, so that we can guarantee more job positions, equal chances for all, while taking care of our environment. And that's also one of the important points. As I said, there are so many others, and the time is not there, but yeah, some of the main ones are here. Yeah. Thank you.
Danke, Herr Radunovic. Das war schon fast eine Regierung.
Thank you, Mr. Radunovic. This was almost a government declaration, because you managed to touch upon so many issues in such a short time. And of course, what you mentioned is going far beyond Montenegro. Thank you for this. We now have Ms. Borodika and then Rina Halimic.
Brief, because all of my colleagues have mentioned the most important points as what they see as challenges in their home countries. So apart from corruption, neglect of rule of law, nepotism, nationalism, I think one of the most important things is also human rights and the neglect of human rights, especially when it comes to minority rights and LGBTQ plus community, which might be one of the reasons why young people migrate to EU, because they have better life quality. So yeah, that's only my remark. Thank you.
So I agree with both of my colleagues. These are very important issues that I agree that also happens for Republic of Albania. These are very common issues for us as well. I can add that Albania, ever since the collapse of communism, has been working tirelessly towards democracy, towards creating equal opportunities for everyone. But the road to democracy and equal opportunities actually is also very large. Before coming here, I was reading a bunch of articles about the Albanian integration into the EU. And it was interesting, but rather saddening, that the articles were dated back in 2015 and 2013, and they were stating the same issues that we have today. So usually the biggest issue for the Albanian government to integrate into the EU is the political games. So the politicians, the government is not really concentrated on the actual issues of the integration, but they want to profit. Corruption, as we discussed, they want to profit themselves, they want to make their relatives profit and everyone that they have dear in their hearts, except for the people that really actually deserve to have those positions or anything that they are not doing that they should focus on. But to step on a very good note, actually, besides the very ruined, actually, Albanian politics, we have actually done so good in international scene. In the previous year, the OSCE was chaired by Albania. I had the honor to be an intern there as well, and I saw for myself all the tireless work that our international diplomats are doing. And although our country in the internal work needs a lot of work, we are setting a very good example for Albanian diplomats worldwide, and they're looking up to us. It was the beginning of COVID-19, and we did such an amazing job without even having any help, without having any examples of how to approach pandemics in the workplace. And just to add a little bit on the previous questions, since I wanted to add something, I've really enjoyed the words of my colleague from Montenegro, and I wanted to say that the EU could help for creating a more accessible future for Western Balkans youth. In the topic of internships, I have experience personally, and I know that many of us have. If we want to apply, we have the opportunity to. So they can say that, yeah, we offer youngsters too many opportunities, they can apply if they want to, but they don't offer legitimation cards, they don't offer ways for you to stay there. So they kind of hide behind the words, we offer an equal and a very accessible workplace, but when it comes to actually keeping the people there, they're not responsible for it. So what the EU countries can do to help the very highly successful or in very high academic level youngsters from all over Western Balkans country is creating accessible ways to keep them in their organizations. It's not our problem to find a legitimation card to stay in the country. It's actually one of the ways you can help the youth just evolve and create a more accessible and equal future for all of us. Thank you.
Danke. Frau Adriana.
Thank you. Ms. Jovanovic. Hello, I am from Serbia. My colleagues mentioned many things, and I think the situation is quite similar in all of our countries. I think in order to get closer to European standards, at least in my own country, we need reforms, basic reforms of the jurisdiction, because that's what's the basis for our economic and political system. And we need a balance between the main pillars of a modern democratic society. I think when it comes to young people and organizations where they can work, we also need support. We should invest in these organizations because young people bring a major value when it comes to furthering our democracies. You have to use this value and have to make sure that young people can also evolve. Thank you.
Vielen Dank. Eine Kollegin.
Thank you very much. Then we have someone from the second row, Ms. Koralic.
My name is Emina and I'm from Bosnia and Herzegovina. And I would like to say the biggest challenge for our countries, or I can speak for my country, is our educational system. And I think I can speak for everyone because we wouldn't be here if it was all good. For example, I came to Austria because I thought Austria can give me better education and better knowledge. So I think that's the biggest challenge. And I think the European Union should do something about it. For example, curriculum reform, or just to change the way of education, the way of teaching young people like us. So thank you.
Vielen Dank.
Thank you. Oh, there's someone else I almost overlooked. You have the floor.
I hope you can properly hear me. Dear ladies and gentlemen, allow me first to thank you for organizing this much-needed event. It's an honor to be here. I believe that the voice of the youth as an important category of the society should be heard about these matters. Briefly, I am Endrit Sadriu. I come from Kosovo. I am a graduate from TU Graz in the field of software development. So I see that there's a lot of focus in our differences, and I believe we have differences. The countries from West Balkan and the countries from European Union have some differences, but I believe that we should also focus on the common values. And I believe that European Union was founded based on these common values, and I think this is the right approach. So I would like to briefly discuss these common values, and I believe that I'm going to talk about Kosovo here, obviously, and in order to answer the posed question, it is perhaps important to also understand what has Kosovo been doing to accelerate its process towards the European Union. Though we can decide when to enter the EU, Kosovo and its people don't need permission to share the European values. And to supplement my argument, allow me to mention these values. It's human dignity, freedom, democracy, equality, rule of law, and human rights. These values are very important to us because we have suffered in the absence of them for a long time. A while ago, Kosovo one more time held its free and democratic elections, and as the result, the power was peacefully transferred to the up until that point opposition. The mission of EU in EULEX oversaw these elections and reported that the latter once again was a major success in terms of democracy. We are a small country, but we made a substantial transition because we believe in democratic values. Though the objectives we were promised in these last elections weren't the visa liberalization nor the negotiations towards EU. Rather, to strengthen the rule of law, fight against crime and corruption, and more job opportunities. Though the first two are very important to us. While we made a substantial progress, this shows our further commitment towards justice and prosperity, not because EU wants it, it's because our society requires it. Women make great leaders. While our newly elected president was the most voted candidate in the last election, she was also the most voted candidate in the history of all elections in Kosovo. So she's not there because a man decided to put her there. It's because she has the full legitimacy. And this marks a huge milestone in our movement towards equality and gender equality in general. Since many EU member states helped us consolidate our country, diversity is at the core of our society. This can be witnessed in our own state symbols, where the 6 stars in our flag represent the major ethnic groups in Kosovo, namely Albanians, Serbs, Bosniaks, Turks, Romani, and Gorani. This said, it is inferred that the rights of the ethnic groups and their political representation is guaranteed by our own constitution. Sharing these common values is a continuation of our commitment towards EU. Sadly, ladies and gentlemen, our country is still being portrayed as a war-torn country where we are struggling with basic needs. However, the reality is far from that on the ground. More often than not, we hear distorted facts about Kosovo as a production of an aggressive propaganda from countries who don't wish us well, while we often fail to see EU representatives to deny these distorted facts. So in this regard, I believe that Kosovo's biggest challenge is its poor image in European Union. Thank you very much for your attention.
Vielen Dank für diese Wortmeldung.
Thank you very much for these comments. Well, maybe let's now move on to the third set of issues. Now, France, apart from Germany, following the Brexit, as has to be said, well, you know that the European Union has also lost an important member country. Well, France and Germany are the 2 big players in the European Union at the moment. This is quite a significant fact. France plays a vital role at European level. Austria, now I don't want to artificially bloat Austria's role, but Austria is actually quite important for the countries of the Western Balkans. Austria has been a leading investor in banking with regards to insurance companies, and also with a view to its history and geographic location. Austria has always focused on this region and attached great importance to it. So whoever becomes a foreign minister, just 10 days ago, we had our new foreign minister, who used to be ambassador in Paris. Well, a few days ago, when he talked to Parliament for the first time, he focused also on the Western Balkans. And the same had been done by the new Chancellor, Alexander Schallenberg. Why am I saying this? Well, because it's quite significant. Now, we now move on to the third set of issues, and then we, the politicians, will provide answers to you. Anyway, this third question is, what do you expect Austria and France to do? We've got 5 groups of the Assemblée Nationale represented here. What do you expect Austria and France to do, quite specifically? So what can we do? What should we do? Also with a view to the Conference of the Future of Europe. And also, what do you expect bilaterally? Mr. Radunovic will make a second national statement.
Short. Well, what are the steps the EU can do to help us on our way on the European integration? Well, first of all, I would like to say generally we need a stronger European presence on the Western Balkans. We need a more proactive role of the European Union. Of course, that can be also said for, in this case, for France and Austria, but I would like to say generally for the EU, not only in the member states, but for the institutions, because we have felt that in the last couple of years, the European Union was a bit passive in their role in the Western Balkans, but we need a strong and more active European Union because as young people from Western Balkans, we see it, our future is European. We do not see any other alternative. If there is not a European Union on the Western Balkans, there is something else, and that something else is probably not good. So we need a strong European Union. And also, when it comes to specific steps that can be done on helping us on our way to EU is to speed up the negotiation process and whole instruments of negotiation. Of course, that is a matter where it takes two sides. We, as a countries, we have to deliver results, but we also expect that the EU, as the other side, do some steps from their side to make it easier, more simple to negotiate and to further advance on the road to European Union. That is, of course, a challenging issue, considering that the decision-making process in the European Union is quite complicated. There has to be a consensus and all that stuff. But we still need a more concrete and specific steps from the European Union. And also, what would be good from my, at least, point of view, considering the current state of the negotiations and the process, it would be better if the countries are evaluated from their results on the EU integration individually. Probably it would be better than addressing it in packages, putting different countries in packages. It could be maybe in one case and one country is making more progress, but it has to wait because some maybe other country from which is it's together in the package has some other issues, or it's maybe slower or anything like that. So maybe it would be better if the process is evaluated individually. Each country has its own path and not as a package. And also we need besides the more active role of European Union, we need also more development projects, more financial help, more incentive from the European Union, because okay, we have to deliver results, but it would be nice that the European Union gives us some kind of stimulation, not just demand and require, but we need also stimulation from European Union when we have done something, when we have closed a chapter of negotiations, or just to see that European Union is there for us. And so that ordinary citizens, not just the intellectual elites or the people who are following the developments of regional politics and the EU affairs, but that the ordinary citizens see, okay, the European Union is here. This is something good, and we want to be part of this. And that is also, in the same time, an excellent campaign, public campaign, for showing the people that the European Union is worth being member of it, and that's something that the European Union can do, and the member states individually. Austria has done a lot, and Austria has proven itself to be a really valuable partner in the whole process of the European integration. France as well, but we need more. The whole point is we just need more of European Union on the Western Balkans. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this statement. Something that has not been touched on so much, maybe you could also take this on board, is the following. Well, Kosovo talked briefly about the Turkish demographic. Well, there's not just Europe in the Western Balkans. There are also investors. And let me just also think about Russia and Turkey and the historic ties and the Ottoman Empire. Well, of course, there are also some ties regarding those countries. And then China, of course, has also started to invest in places like Montenegro. And then we also know that a few Gulf states have taken or gained a foothold in the Western Balkans. So why don't you also comment on this quite briefly? It was pointed out, rightly so, that the visibility of the EU is not as pronounced as it should be. The EU is not as present as it should be. But then, of course, if there were no integration, then it would be very costly for us as well in terms of protecting our external borders. Well, you asked for the floor before, and then you were going to add something too. Go ahead, please.
I would like to thank you for the floor. I would like to draw the attention on the two common issues of the youngsters, of Western Balkan youngsters. So the first one is the education, and the second one is starting our career, so let's say internships. So firstly, education is very accessible, so I would just like to thank the representative of France, of Germany, and to some extent to Austrian ones, because personally I did my legal studies at France, at the Sorbonne University, for a price that I could have it's even cheaper than I could have paid in my own country. So it's very accessible. Youngsters that really want to study in Europe can do that in these countries. So I'm grateful for that. And I imagine I speak in the names of everyone. But what can be done actually as an actual solution is regarding to internships. As I said previously, it's very rare that you find institutions or jobs that offer internships with legitimation cards. They really don't care about the aspect that you cannot legally stay there after your studies. Some countries, like Austria, offer 1 year in addition to your studies to find a job. But even that job, will it actually assure that you will stay in the country? So what an actual solution would be is every job would offer a legitimation card for people that are very deserving of it and to be paid. Because if we come from countries that are not that developed after our studies, I'm afraid we will need to go back to our countries. So for people that are deserving and for people that are not good economically, we can offer, and that can be, taken into account of how you perceive someone that is not good economically. It's something that you can yourself develop as a discussion. But yes, some legitimation card and a paid internship would be a very good start to offer an inclusive and an equal future for all.
Danke für diese konkreten.
Thanks for these specific suggestions. Please go ahead.
Something short to connect to the story of my colleague Radunovic. I think that everyone in life sometimes needs a little push, and I think that Montenegro is at the point where we need a little more motivation. We need more positive campaigning from the EU, and just that little final push to get us to the point where we can finally enter after all these years of trying campaigning. Yeah, thank you.
Go ahead.
I would like to add just shortly regarding the presence of EU on the Balkans. I think also that it is also the geopolitical interest of the European Union to be there. Because as you said, there are other geopolitical actors that are quite interested for the region. And if the European Union is not there, someone else will be, either economically or politically. And then it gets a problem for the European Union itself, because if some other actors that are not, I would say, completely compatible with the European values are there at the doorstep of the European Unions, then the problems could just spill over to the European Union. So we are just not, as we are part of the Europe, we are also in the doorstep of the European Union, and it is important for the European Union itself what happens there. So I would say it's not just a matter of helping us on being there for us, but also securing the own interests of the European Union by not letting some other geopolitical players take their role. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The colleague representing Austrian youth. Thank you very much. Well, as EU youth delegate, we are dealing with these issues in great detail. How can young people be helped locally? Well, we also collaborate with the Council of Europe. So it's not just the EU member countries, but all of Europe. All of Europe is meant by this. And here I tie in with what some of my colleagues said before, and this is something that we've also discussed. We need to reach out to the young people out there and help them and support them. As I've already mentioned, corruption is a big issue. Things are not working all that well. So money is spent on these countries, and often the money is not fairly distributed. So we should make sure that there are local youth organizations there that could be supported. And again, I tie in with what was already said. You all want to be part of Europe. You want to be a part of the EU, and you want to feel that you're a part of it. And this is possible thanks to programs like Erasmus+. Erasmus+ has been expanded because it's very important for young people who live in EU member countries to get this European feeling. So it's quite important. It's even more important for people coming from non-EU member countries. So we should also support NGOs and invest in education. Well, education policy, unfortunately, is a national affair, but civic education would be quite important, would be very important for things to progress. Education is power. Of course, education does not always suffice if you have no job opportunities, and this, unfortunately, is the case pretty often in the Western Balkans. That's an issue that we find there quite often, but thanks to education, you can become and turn into mature citizens and educated citizens, and that allows you to make important political decisions. You should not underestimate the population. You just have to give them the right tools, especially young people. Thank you. Thank you very much. One colleague? Yes. Well, two actually. Two statements. I've already seen her. Diona, yes? Yes. And then you. Okay, you are now taking the floor for the first time, I think.
For this opportunity. I am Diona Hoxha, and I come from the Republic of Kosovo. I am a master's student here, a master's in gender studies. And firstly, I would like to thank you for inviting us, the young people of the southeastern part of Europe, to discuss on our vision for the future, our country's paths to the EU, and our challenges along the way. We are honored to be here and be given the chance to discuss equally among friends. I would like to briefly answer your point regarding the Russian, Turkish, and Chinese expansion in the region, because there is a gap of investments from the EU, and we have witnessed that. Someone else is using this gap and this vacuum to expand their influence in the region. So we have the donations coming from EU institutions in the form of aid, but aid is not equal to investments. We have witnessed the expansions of the previously mentioned states in the region, and this is as a result of the lack of interest from EU countries to invest in Kosovo, and I think this should be dealt very soon. As a young person born and raised in Kosovo, I was taught that Kosovo is a part of the EU continent. We share the same values as EU member states with regards to democratic standards, human rights, economic goals, and ethnic and religious tolerance. Hospitality is one of the elements that characterizes our nation. However, we have found resistance in the hospitality of the EU member states to letting us become a part of their club. Our people, especially the young, have many expectations from the EU and in its institutions because we strongly believe in the principles that they promote and the causes that they fight for. This is why we are continuously working on improving our economic and political situation in order to become valuable addition to this community. Given the time constraint, I would try to minimize the list of expectations that we have for the EU. The first one is the sense of belonging. We, all of us here today, have more in common than differences. We just don't share the continent together. We have a common history, and we will share a common future. It is not rare to find that our people, young and old, women and men alike, are treated as second-hand citizens in most cases within the EU, regardless whether they are Kosovar citizens or neutralized EU citizens with Kosovar background. What we youngsters from Kosovo expect is to be treated equally with other Europeans. It goes without saying that the same courtesy should be extended to everyone and not Europeans only. In the end of the day, we would want to be treated without prejudice and labels, especially on the institutional side, and not to be left to feel unwanted just for the passport we carry on our hands. And the second one, I want to stress the freedom of movement. Some colleagues have raised this issue as well before. We expect to be granted free movement for our people, which is a basic human right and a mere privilege that our people have been deprived of. We are constrained by visas, lengthy bureaucratic procedures, and piles of documents needed, which are not just time-consuming but costly as well, in order to visit our friends and family in different parts of Europe. We miss out on weddings, graduations, deaths, and celebration of our relatives, let alone having the chance to easily roam around Europe and enrich our cultural baggage by enjoying the beautiful sights and learning history by being a tourist. We simply expect fair treatment and equal opportunities with our peers from other countries. We want to be a part of your club, and we strongly believe that we will be a great added value to your community. Thank you.
Well, I prepared a speech, but I'm not going to read my statement. I'd like to compliment what Mr. Radunovic said. Well, there are a number of packages that have been compiled for the Western Balkans. But then we're individual countries. Now, there are some countries that have progressed a lot, countries that meet a lot of expectations. But then, of course, we're all lumped together, and this is not good for the countries that have progressed so much. So countries should be assessed individually in terms of moving closer to the EU. I mean, we have a lot of similarities and commonalities, whether it's Kosovo, Montenegro. Well, the same goes for Serbia as well, of course. Things are similar, of course, but things are also different in our countries. Well, if the countries concerned were now seen individually, well, this would be better. I mean, after all, they're independent states. So we should treat countries individually and not lump them together. That's it from my side. Thank you. Well, I don't want to interrupt anyone, obviously. Mr. Radunovic, you wanted to add something? And let's have the break afterwards. And after the break, answers will be given by the politicians. About 30 minutes altogether. So the French side will talk for about 30 minutes, and then the Austrians would talk for about 30 minutes, so that a lot of groups, political groups, can also make their voices heard. It's important for every political group to be able to take the floor. Okay, Mr. Radunovic, maybe there is a follow-up comment as well? Yes, okay. All right. Two statements, yes. Go ahead.
Using the time, I will be just brief. I also wanted to emphasize a very important aspect of regional cooperation, that we as Western Balkan country, we need to cooperate more intensively, and which is also a very important part of the whole EU integration, because we need, as a so to say, a neighborhood, our neighboring countries, we need to cooperate well, and we need to expand our cooperation to many different levels, because and also resolve the issues, because some of the countries have some issues with other countries have to be resolved. But I just wanted to point out that the regional cooperation between the Western Balkan countries is very important. We have it now on the CEFTA agreement and through Berlin process, which is emphasizing the regional cooperation. But I think it could and should be even more, because there is so much in common. A lot of times the differences are put to the front, but when we analyze, as the colleagues also said, there's so much in common. And we have common interests, our common European dream, so to say. And I think that when we work more together, then we can also help each other on the European way. And European Union can help us. As I said, we have CEFTA agreement, Berlin process, and probably there will be more initiatives and programs from the European Union. But I think that together we can do it better and faster if we, as a region, as we cooperate. Yeah. Thank you.
Danke. Jetzt
All right, one more statement, but actually you raised your hand before. Yeah, let me just add something concerning education. Based on my experience, I know that a lot of young people study in Serbia knowing full well that they probably won't get a job in their own sectors. And that's why very often you have this brain drain. And this happens before young people start studying and afterwards. There's a lot of uncertainty, financial uncertainty, and a lot of other types of uncertainty. Young people should have more rights and should be given greater freedoms. And that will, of course, make it easier for them, and that will also make them feel safer. They will have more certainty. And let me add one more thing. I think that students from the EU and from the Western Balkans, they should be put on an equal footing. The students from the Balkans, well, they only have limited opportunities when it comes to their right of residence, for example, their legal title, or job opportunities. They should be given the same rights as EU students or Austrian students when we think about Austria. Thank you. Yes, the final comment, and then we'll take our break.
Briefly, well, though I was going to talk about something else, I believe that a very good point was brought here in the collaboration between the West Balkan countries. We need to learn how to share these common values, to find common values to make a better version of ourselves. And the reality, for example, often even when I've been in Austria for some times now, and it's not the same as what we see in the television. It's not the same as what we see with the politics topics, and the collaboration is much better. And we need that also brought to Balkan, not after we come to EU to understand, for example, that wow, it's great to collaborate with each other, because it is. We need that also in our own countries. And one more point that was mentioned here, and I want to mention that, emphasize that, is that we definitely need European Union to be a solid partner. We don't want to believe that we have different alternatives. We want to believe that this is our way to, this is our future, and no other alternative. Someone mentioned here that if there is some gap left from someone else, other entities might try to take advantage of this and fill this gap, and we don't want that, and we don't need that. Thank you very much.
vielen Dank.
Well, thank you very much for these interesting statements that you've delivered. And thanks also, to be very frank, thanks also for saying the things you said. You've been very serious, you've been very open and frank, and you have pinpointed the problems that exist in your countries as well as at EU level. You talked about the challenges facing young people, but you also shared a lot of commitment with us. All of you shared commitment, and all of you focused on the fact that you consider the future of your countries in the EU. And you said that there is no alternative to the EU for your countries. All right, we'll now take a break and we'll reconvene at 4 o'clock. I don't have a bell here, but please be back on time nevertheless. So let's get started again at 4 o'clock sharp after the break. My thanks go again to you for having found the time. My thanks also go to the French colleagues. Thanks for putting this together. All right, thank you. Enjoy the 30-minute coffee break. Thank you.
Ja, nach der Pause beginnen wir wieder. Ich bedanke mich, wie gesagt, für die vielen Wortmeldungen. Es wird jetzt nicht einfach sein, seitens der Politik zu antworten. Vielleicht machen wir abwechselnd jemand aus dem Assemblée Nationale und dann jemand von uns, aus unserem Parlament, aus dem österreichischen Nationalrat. Ich darf vielleicht die Vorsitzende bitten, dass sie uns sagt, wer von Frankreich zuerst antwortet. Ja, weil Sie haben das Schlusswort dann. Ich habe dann das Schlusswort. Ja, genau. Wer von Ihnen zuerst antwortet von den Fraktionen?
Merci beaucoup, chers collègues. Tout d'abord encore merci beaucoup à vous.
Vielen Dank. Zunächst danke nochmals für Ihre Wortmeldungen, für Ihre Anregungen. Es wird nicht einfach, hier Schlussfolgerungen zu ziehen. Ich werde mich dieser Aufgabe dennoch stellen, möchte das Wort zunächst der Vizepräsidentin des Europaausschusses geben, Liliana Sonki von Republik En Marche. Vielen Dank, Herr Vorsitzender, Frau Vorsitzende. Guten Tag. Zunächst möchte ich der hier vertretenen Jugend ganz herzlich für die rege Teilnahme danken, für die Teilnahme an der Konferenz über die Zukunft Europas. Nicht zuletzt ist auch das ja eine Sorge der jungen Menschen aus den Westbalkanstaaten, dass wir uns ihrer Zukunft in unseren Aussprachen annehmen und ihren Möglichkeiten, ihren Chancen im Europa der Zukunft. Ganz herzlich Glück wünschen möchte ich den französischen und österreichischen Abgeordneten, die die Initiative zu dieser Konferenz ergriffen haben. Und insbesondere möchte ich darauf eingehen, dass vor einigen Tagen wir in Frankreich auch eine Aussprache organisiert haben, und zwar im Ausschuss für europäische Angelegenheiten der französischen Nationalversammlung mit einer Organisation, nämlich der Jugend Europas. Und es freut mich umso mehr, dass wir uns heute mit Ihnen ähnlichen oder gleichen Themen annehmen. Ich kann mich des Eindrucks nicht erwehren, dass die Jugend aus den EU-Ländern und die Jugend aus ihren Herkunftsländern vor ganz ähnlichen Herausforderungen und Problemen stehen. Ich kann diese Initiativen der Jugend aus den Balkanländern nur meine Unterstützung aussprechen. Und ich denke, wir müssen die jungen EU-Bürgerinnen und Bürger näher an die jungen Bürgerinnen und Bürger aus den Westbalkanstaaten heranführen, denn sie gemeinsam werden das europäische Einigungswerk vorantreiben. Ich weiß nicht, wie viel Redezeit ich jetzt eigentlich habe. Ich möchte mich jedenfalls auf einige Punkte konzentrieren und dabei zunächst auf die erste Frage zurückkommen, nämlich den Brain Drain der jungen Menschen, der ja von vielen angesprochen wurde. Vieles wurde hierbei erwähnt. Sie sagten unter anderem, dass das Bildungssystem auf neue Grundfesten gestellt werden muss, dass das Wirtschaftssystem verbessert werden muss, damit die jungen Menschen einen garantierten Arbeitsplatz haben, insbesondere die jungen Menschen in den Westbalkanstaaten. Und in diesem Zusammenhang möchte ich darauf hinweisen, dass die Europäische Union einen Wirtschafts- und Investitionsplan für die Westbalkanstaaten ins Leben gerufen hat mit 9 Milliarden Euro Budget. Und zwar wurde das 2020 von der Europäischen Kommission lanciert. Innerhalb dieses Plans gibt es einen
includes the youth guarantee mechanism. I don't know if you've heard about this mechanism. I talked to some of you during the break. It's a mechanism that aims to offer offer a job position or an apprenticeship to every young person within 3 months after they concluded their studies or basic education. So if this applies to you, it would mean trying to find a job in one of your target countries. And if you're interested in that, then it's this mechanism that you could be using. The member states would then be called upon to make sure that this offer is indeed made to you. In France, we have an initiative which is called Un jeune, une solution, a solution for every young person. We have quite similar problems indeed in France. Then about the challenges that we face and how we can overcome them, many questions have been raised in this regard too: corruption, rule of law, justice systems, and so on. These are indeed very important challenges, and I think that as the young generation from your nations who are going to forge the future of your countries and of Europe, that you should be more in touch with your peers from other European countries through common civilian initiatives. We have heard of some examples, and we also discussed this with young people from our country, and they also said that they would very much like to start a European system or a European exchange between young persons, which also includes the Western Balkans. About the third question, the challenges of the environmental transition were also mentioned, and I think this is something that is also of concern to young people within the European Union as much as it is for the European Commission, which, in my opinion, should come up with a roadmap for the Western Balkans with a view to their integration in the European Green Deal. If we want to make sure that the Western Balkan countries engage in environmental transition and take care of these major challenges that are of concern for our young people and also for us members of parliament, then we have to include them in this major European environment protection plan. And in conclusion, on the role of France and Austria, I'm not going to talk about Austria, of course, but when it comes to France and helping the European integration of your countries, it was mentioned that we need more from the European Union in this regard. Well, when it comes to France, let me tell you that even though France sometimes seems to be a bit reluctant when it comes to supporting enlargement and giving a European perspective to the Western Balkan countries, we still have to point out that in 2019, President Macron said that France should have a strategy for the Western Balkan countries, which would also include an increased engagement of France in this respect. And this would include cooperation, strengthened cooperation at a regional level, so that these countries can make constant progress towards reaching common European standards and towards their integration. But because, of course, this integration cannot happen within 2 or 3 years. And for this reason, France also proposed a review of the accession methodology, which was then later approved by the European Council. And so Montenegro and Serbia are now going to use this new methodology, which I hope will bear fruits and will bring about specific progress towards their integration. I think that what is most important for France is the respect for the European values and the integration of the common European acquis in the legal systems of the Western Balkan countries. If these conditions aren't met, there's always going to be a limit or a hindrance to the integration of these countries and their people. But I am quite certain that in a concerted way, and thanks to our interparliamentary cooperation, we are going to make progress in this direction. I have to say, however, that not everyone within the French National Assembly agrees with our approach. For example, I have made proposals by way of an initiative report, also with regard to the upcoming French presidency of the European Union, with a view to integrating the Western Balkans more within the framework of the French presidency. Of course, that's not a priority for everyone, but I would still hope to have an increased parliamentary cooperation with Austria, with Germany, and so on. And I hope that this proposal of mine will finally be accepted. Thank you. Thank you very much for your comprehensive explanations. I've also read your report, by the way, and we're now going to turn to two Austrian members of parliament, Ms. Holzleitner of the Social Democratic Party, and then Mr. Havenecker from the Freedom Party. Thank you very much, and thank you to all the young people who are present here and made such excellent contributions. I took good note of what was mentioned. I think the topics are central for the European future, because it's your future, and so it's important that you can make yourselves heard, and it's all the more important to have a dialogue with you, young people from the Western Balkans, so that we, and let me say that I'm someone who's coming from a very practical background. It's important for us politicians to forward your messages and spread them in the various channels. We are going to use some of what you contributed within the plenary meetings, but of course it's also something that we are going to use at a national and at a bilateral level. For example, things such as cooperation between universities, or a cooperation maybe with the Ministry of Education. We can raise some questions there and ask whether forms of cooperation that exist even now could be increased. How can you, for example, link university education to further training and education or professional perspectives? And I think it's something that can also be summarized under one central term, which would be independence, deciding for your own future. And this is something that's very important. It's a very clear message that we have to give the Western Balkans. Clear perspectives, clear rules. We have just had the latest Western Balkans summit, which maybe did not bring the results we would all have hoped for. So it's clear that we have to continue working in this direction. And our chairman mentioned this in his initial statement last week. We had a session of the Conference on the Future of Europe, and on this occasion, we also talked about voting age. I was one of those young people who was able to start voting at the age of 16, and I think that this was a very good thing in Austria. In addition, we have a statutory representation of young people at all levels, and our young people from Austria, the National Youth Council, as it is called, is represented here today. And we've had very positive experiences with this. It's important to include young people and to have them participate also at a political level. And this is not just about voting. There are many other participatory means that are available to young people. And let me add one more thing. You're young, you're motivated. Please stay this way and make sure that you use all those possibilities that you have in your own home countries. Use the ways and means for political participation, because you are the future of Europe, and so it's important that you also give your contribution. And we are going to study how we can give more support to the civil society, to young people. These are the points I take home from today's discussion. I think participation of young people is something that is fundamental when we talk about how young people can forge their own future. Thank you. Let us move on to Mr. Hafenecker, who was an election observer who went to Bosnia and Herzegovina with me some time ago. Thank you, Mr. Lopatka, and first of all, let me also commend everyone for organizing this discussion, and I would also like to apologize for arriving late today. There are several reasons for that. Unfortunately, I was not able to hear your statements before, but let me maybe just use this occasion to say a few words about these three core questions. Mr. Lopatka mentioned that both of us had a chance to be election observers. I was in Kosovo twice, and we managed to see one of the issues that was also mentioned here today, the brain drain with Kosovo and double citizenship with Croatia. Many young people have the possibility to make use of European citizenship, and therefore they left their country, which I think was not good for the region. And for this reason, we as the Freedom Party are critical when it comes to an immediate accession of your countries, because we think if these countries become full members and then enjoy the freedom of establishment in the European Union, this would lead to even more young people leaving their countries. Our colleague from France also mentioned a few initiatives, and we would rather focus on privileged forms of economic partnership so as to strengthen the economy in these countries. I think we need partnerships also with regard to administration. States such as the Kosovo and Bosnia and Herzegovina need to make progress with regard to their administration and self-administration, and if we succeed in that, a lot has been done, and then we can take further steps and can see how to align these countries more and more towards the European Union. There's another topic that we also think is important when it comes to the Balkans, and that's the ethnical problems that there are. And in Austria, I think we have to use our position and to help balance positions there with a view to ending any conflicts. Another problem we see in the Balkans is the increase of radical Islam in this region. We see this as a problem, as a development that has been very strong, especially in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and I think we should not close our eyes in this respect and should monitor developments there. And let me just close by saying that this event today is an important one. We should use our institutions to help improving the overall situation in the Balkans. And of course, we will do our level best to reach this goal. Thank you very much, Constance Le Gré, for the Republican Party. Thank you, Chair. Let me first of all thank all participants, young participants, who have made very convincing and strong statements. Thank you also to Chairman Lopatka and the Austrian Parliament for having given us this opportunity to have an exchange and discussion. I'm a member of the plenary assembly of the Conference on the Future of Europe. The French National Assembly is represented by 2 MPs and 2 senators, just like other countries, and I was also present during the plenary meeting last week. And it was interesting to hear the contribution of some, although only few, young people also on that occasion. And it's very important that the perspective and the opinion of young people from the Western Balkans are not missing in this discussion on the future of Europe. Now, many things have been said. I would just like to make 2 or 3 statements, speak about some of the impressions I've had. The European Union, of course, is made up by its institutions. You know that the Council, the European Commission, the European Parliament. The European Union, most of all, is an alliance, a political and an economic alliance and union between European nations. Some are old nations, some are younger nations, all based on the nation-state model, which is very familiar in Europe. And now, as a member of Parliament, I am a representative of the French people, of French sovereignty, and it's important to hear the voice of the various peoples, in my case of the French people. And I have to be honest with you, and you won't be surprised, that the peoples who make up the European Union, and I have to be honest once again, if we look at their current opinion and if we look at the various political movements and currents, say, for example, in France, we have seen that there is not a very large majority in favor of enlargement. It's rather the opposite. We have to deal with our own problems, and they are not few. Brexit is something that has been a big problem, not just for the United Kingdom, but also for us, for the European Union, who have not succeeded in convincing this large member of staying within the Union. And you have all heard about the recent political issues in Poland and in other countries, and this has also led to quite some worries. And then we have this increasing anti-EU and anti-European movement, which we should not neglect, and which goes across several European countries, and which also includes and touches several political families. So as politicians, this is something we have to take note of. This is our task. So as regards also my own political family, and when I look at the past but also at the future, I have to say that I am convinced that we, both Europeans who are part of the European Union and those who are part of the Western Balkans, that we are both looking to the same future, the same destiny, for a long time, I think. That said, however, I think we need to be realistic. We need to know what has been done, what is still before us, where we can do more, where we can take maybe additional initiatives on the side of the EU member states or the European institutions even. And we also have to consider what can be done in the mid and long term. If we look at a 7-year circle, we have this an economic and investment plan of 7 billion euros that is going to run for 7 years, as was said. Currently, it is our task to make this instrument more known in the press, through the media. Each and every one of your states will also have to do more to spread this information. And we have a lot to do, especially also France, for example. It's large companies, it's banks, maybe also small and medium enterprises should be more present. And that is certainly our responsibility, and we're certainly also interested in working on this. Then there are also other specific issues. I've mentioned this EIP, the Economic and Investment Plan of 30 billion, and then there's the initiative of reducing roaming costs in your common regional area. That's also a very specific dossier that we need to make progress on, because that's something that can be done. The official declaration after the latest EU Western Balkans summit of the 6th October was, of course, disappointing, because it was a repetition of the same old statements, which were not very specific, which did not give any specific deadlines or targets. So it was seen by many as let's say at least as very disappointing, and of course topics such as visa requirements and so on were not mentioned clearly. But as I said, we have to be realistic, and we are conscious of the fact that we have mutual strategic interests. We know our common history. We know what is happening on the side of China, Russia, Turkey, who have lots of funds, and some of them have very flagrantly shown that they have a very expansionist policy in mind. So we have to be realistic. We also have to be honest, without complacency and without exaggerating, because it's among friends that we discuss. We are friends with the same destiny, the same values. This was also mentioned, and you have insisted on this. And of course, your generation has a core responsibility when it comes to consolidating and to sharing these values, which we of course also find in your countries. And there's a lot that remains to be done to share these values even more and to have them anchored in the various institutions, in the media, in the justice system, in the political system. So that's what I wanted to contribute. Again, let me tell you that France is not reticent. We are just conscious of reality and of the fragile situation that we have in our respective countries.
La parole est à
Frédéric Dumas comes up next. Liberté et territoire. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for welcoming us together with your colleagues. I would like to thank all the young people. That's the only way for us to learn more about each other. So being able to relate to something and making this discussion more human, well, that's very important as a politician, often involved in election campaigns. This is not always easy. Well, thanks for sharing your personal stories with us. I'd like to also be as impressionist as my colleagues. Now, you've said it all. Motivation. Yes, we all have the same motivations, obviously. Of course, you want to live a better life elsewhere, economically speaking, culturally speaking. You want to unfold your potential and tap into your potential, and this is completely legitimate. And then another thing that I'd like to point out. Now, when you come here to study, you may wish to decide to keep on living in EU member countries, and sometimes this is quite difficult. And when you turn back to your home countries, well, things are just as complicated because there are not enough jobs for you. Now, before talking about methods, let me also have two suggestions, or repeat some suggestions, even though they're completely different. I think you talked about those pathways. You talked about, you talked about companies that are able to take on people from your country, so that you could learn more about the culture. So cultural mediation. That was actually quite an interesting suggestion you made. And then I don't think that we have much choice. We have to be realistic. But this means that we should face up to the fact that if we are too isolationist, if we prevent people from coming to our countries, well, this will not solve problems for us. And it would mean that we just delay the problem or postpone the problem. Now, of course, the problems facing countries are different, so we don't want to come up with packages, but there are structural issues. There are serious problems: corruption, as you already said, organized crime. Then the public sector often doesn't work, education. Yes, all of these are problems to be solved. So what we have to do, as was said by my colleague, we have to help you, we have to accompany you so that you overcome all these issues and challenges. Now, there is a huge problem, and that refers to governance. We talked about the 30 billion that will be earmarked, that will be spent. Some funding has already come your way. So we want money to be spent wisely, of course. While in international meetings, we often exchange our views. We really have to set the right goals. Now, France and some other countries came up with a number of suggestions. Now, we might actually also change our methodology. I hope that we're not being too technocratic. What's really important is to make sure that goals are achieved. So our methodology may need to be changed, but then, of course, the methodology, of course, also needs to achieve goals. If we don't do anything, we're all going to face problems in the future. And that would be too isolationist. And then you have to be hands-on, pragmatic. The money needs to be spent where it should be spent. And then, of course, the leaders of your countries, well, they should reduce the complexity of your systems. And then one more element that's also quite interesting. You talked about the package. You said that countries should be evaluated more individually. Yes, I think we should sort of look into the advantages and disadvantages of countries, but there should be greater pragmatism as well as political will. And if there's political will and pragmatism, I'm sure that he will progress. Thank you. Yes, and now the Liberals, the Liberal Party. Niki Sherak, please go ahead on behalf of your group. Well, my thanks go to you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for launching this initiative. Thanks for making it possible for us to engage in this exchange of views. I'm convinced that politicians should listen to young people more, and we're trying to do this as the Liberal Party. It's about your future that's at stake. And I'm still young, you know, I'm 35. I think I could still be called a young person. But anyway, very often we lose sight of the fact that what we do now will have an impact on the future. We've already talked about climate change and many other things. Now, as to the Western Balkans perspective, well, you've all told us that you have one perspective only. You want to accede as quickly and efficiently as possible to the European Union. And it's great that we've had this exchange of views also involving the French colleagues. The colleague sitting right from me has already pointed out that there is still some reticence, some reluctance, and skepticism as far as the accession of the Western Balkan countries is concerned, unfortunately. Now, what's my takeaway? Now, we as an EU have to show responsibility. When it comes to rule of law and anti-corruption, we should get things started as quickly as possible. As you said, there is no alternative, you said. Yes, there is no alternative. Now, the Western Balkan countries, of course, should approach the European Union as quickly as possible. If they don't manage to do this, there will be a void filled by other players. We just observed the elections, Mr. Lopatka and myself, in Uzbekistan. Now, if we're not present on site as a European Union, then other countries will step in. And then the things that were mentioned before will come to the fore even more. You know, well-educated young people, well, they will then leave the Western Balkan countries in even greater numbers, and that, of course, means that corruption will go rampant even more and cannot be solved. Now, there are some corruption discussions or discussions about corruption in countries like Austria as well. Now, I'm a lawyer by training. When it comes to climate change, pensions, or other big issues, well, first of all, we need to have a system, a non-corrupt system where rule of law works, where citizens can actually rely on the system so that they can enforce their rights. Once we've managed to do this in every country concerned, we can then discuss other things. It doesn't mean that those things are less important. You know, environmental protection, climate change, that's a given. We must put something on the table. If we can't do this, then the world that we're talking about won't exist, or the world that we live in will look very, very different. So the European Union, of course, can make its contribution, especially when it comes to accession talks. Rule of law. The rule of law systems need to be promoted in those countries. It's our responsibility as a European Union to make sure that this happens. We have to be very consistent. Just think about Turkey and accession talks that have dragged on for a long time. And I'm someone who's changed their opinion, quite frankly. When it comes to Turkey, well, Turkey should have been given a chance to come closer to European values, but the opposite occurred. Well, the funds were taken on by Turkey, and then Turkey developed very differently from what we expected. But then, of course, there are also discussions going on at EU level concerning Poland and Hungary for quite a while. So again, this is our responsibility. We have to act as quickly and efficiently as possible so that reforms can be implemented together with the countries of the Western Balkans. And then hopefully we'll be given the opportunity to actually get a hold on the brain drain and change it. Erasmus Plus, yes, there should be greater exchange so that Europe can be experienced better. That's key. Every young person who's been an Erasmus student or an exchange student in general or who's worked abroad. I, for example, worked in Brussels for a while as an intern. Well, this is great. You know, this was a great experience, and every young person should experience what the EU stands for and the potential offered by the European Union, the opportunities that the European Union presents. Well, there's no alternative. That was really a key takeaway. Yes, there is no alternative. The Austrian position is quite clear. There's a clear majority for this perspective, and we want accessions to take place as quickly as possible. And we owe this to the other. The accession process needs to be a smooth one. Anti-corruption work is very important. There should be improvements there, obviously. And then I hope that we're in for a rosy European future. This is what it's all about. And I guess the same holds true for you. Thank you. Thank you. My thanks go to the members of Parliament. Thanks for your statements. Well, obviously, we from the Austrian Parliament, well, we very much support the accession aspirations. And we also agree on the fact that in the Western Balkans, pathways should be shorter. You know, a better road infrastructure, broadband upgrading. Now, Slovenia and Croatia, of course, joined the EU a while ago, but then I realized that it's actually quite difficult to get from Austria via Slovenia to Croatia because the highway, the Autoput, was not finished. And whenever you go to these countries, you realize that the road infrastructure needs to be upgraded. And then, of course, you should move closer to the European Union. And this also includes roaming charges, as was mentioned by Ms. Le Grip. Visa, well, you know, there are some security aspects that must be taken into consideration, so it's a bit different. So opening up means that our own security may be endangered. So these security concerns need to be taken into consideration as well. Now, our businesses were like gold diggers for a while. They invested heavily in the region, and then things got quite calm. But now it's important to give a perspective to young people in their home countries, and we should encourage our companies by ensuring that the right conditions prevail, allowing our companies to invest and to create jobs. And this would also strengthen the headquarters that are found in our country. So we benefit from that. Well, this, of course, won't be the last meeting of its kind. Let me just assure you that this will continue. Whenever you want to, contact your embassies. We've got friendship groups of friends, including all the countries of the Western Balkans. We've got members of parliament that are willing to make more contributions. So if you want to reach out to members of parliament, get in contact. This is very important for us, you know, listening to each other, coming closer to each other. Regardless of when the date of accession will be. So, Mr. Scherak already mentioned the rule of law principle that must be upheld. Yes, this should be a priority. Well, with this in mind, I would like to thank the members of parliament once again, and my thanks, of course, also go to our guests from the Western Balkan countries. Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. There are two colleagues who would like to take the floor, Pierre-Henri Dumont from the Republicans and then France Insoumise. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Chair, dear colleagues. Dear participants, it's an honor and a privilege for us French parliamentarians to meet you here in Vienna to talk about common visions and the future of the European Union with a view to the enlargement process, especially involving those who will play an important role in this enlargement process. I very much appreciate your willingness to move closer to the European Union, to understand, and you should also understand, that the future of the Western Balkans should be attuned to the European Union. So this is necessary. And it's also necessary for us to talk about things frankly and sincerely, to talk about destiny in the medium and the long run. Now, there seems to be a great deal of political willingness. Now, you all want to join the European Union. Young people want to have their countries move closer to the European Union so that they have job opportunities, so that they can study abroad. But then, of course, they also want to make sure that there is more democratic governance in your countries, and you want your countries to move closer to this European Union of values for all its imperfections. We talked about corruption, we talked about human rights, we talked about parliamentarism. Now, belonging to the European Union, of course, is not an end in itself. Belonging to the European Union means that we should avoid making mistakes that were made in the past. I'm talking about the 2004 enlargement. So within your countries, you should uphold European standards, human rights, anti-corruption work, institution building, capacity building, respecting the rights of women, for example, as well as economic issues, economic problems to be solved. And it's only after that we can then open up accession talks within the European Union. Now, the European Union, well, there are some imperfections. It doesn't work perfectly. There are some issues concerning unanimity rules within the Council, for example. There are other issues, too, that beset us. What about the distribution of powers among states? There are countries like Malta and Luxembourg that are able to block decisions just as other countries with 40, 50, 60, 70, or 80 million people. So Europe is imperfect, and that has led to the Brexit. Today, we are not in an expansionist period, but in a shrinking phase. So we need to make sure that we overcome challenges within the European Union, challenges that we're facing, and then the expansionist phase could start again. Let me talk about the 2004 enlargement process. It was different from the enlargements that we had before. It was a geopolitical enlargement. So in 2004, what was the ultimate goal? Well, we wanted countries to get out of the sphere of influence of Russia and to make them move closer to the European Union. So that was the ultimate goal back then. Today, unfortunately, this expansion process has still not been absorbed or digested by the European Union. Just think about what's going on in Poland. So we're talking about democratic principles, but look at what's going in Poland, where the Polish Constitutional Court has challenged the underlying principles of the European Union. So the European Union must remain the European Union. It cannot sell itself out. As was said by my colleague, after the Brexit, there's now a lot of distrust in Western societies as far as the EU is concerned. There are right-wing, left-wing populist movements, and there are also anti-European movements that have moved up quite strongly in Western societies. So people are questioning the very foundations of the European Union to a greater extent. So institutional reforms must be carried out, and then, of course, what about the migration issue? So what will be the perspective or the result of the Pact on Migration or environment? Well, for a number of years now, we've talked about carbon taxation to make it possible for our companies to be competitive or to be just as competitive as companies in China. So we still haven't decided all these issues. These are important issues that need to be solved before welcoming new countries. So we need to get our house in order first. And then I come to the end. Let's talk about foreign interference. Just think about the Chinese in the port of Piraeus in Greece, or Montenegro. Just think about the fact that some assets have been sold to Chinese companies to buy a freeway. And this, of course, gives rise to national sovereignty issues. So if we want these countries to integrate if we want to integrate the Western Balkans countries, we need to solve these issues. Yes, we need to open up a perspective, but it should be a long-term perspective, not a medium-term perspective. But your generation or the follow-up generations will benefit from this. But of course, you have to play an important role. You have to espouse your pro-European convictions, and you have to make sure that European standards are respected in your country, so that following this period, you are now stronger, democratically speaking, to then accede to the European Union. So this should be a long-term perspective rather than a short-term or medium-term perspective, because this means that Western countries are more distrustful and will remain more distrustful of the well-functioning of the European Union. Thank you. Daniel Loguneau. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. My thanks go to the Austrian colleagues. Thanks for having welcomed us. It's been a very, very useful exchange for us. So we now think about Europe and the world a bit differently. Now, traditionally, of course, our perspective has been a different one. We've focused on Southern Europe, or we have focused on our relationship to Germany. So this has been a very useful experience for us to learn more about your countries now here that we're in Austria. And it's been very interesting for us to learn more about how you see Europe and how you see your individual and collective future. A lot of things have already been pointed out. It's important, of course, to have this exchange of views. As far as answers are concerned, well, we're going to come up with those specific answers during the French presidency, for example, of the European Union as of the 1st of January. These are discussions, of course, that also involve the French Parliament. So it's important, of course, to find the proper answers to these questions. But then I'd like to come back to three issues that have been singled out. First, and this is, of course, something that has piqued my interest in our discussion. Young people, you, in other words. Well, of course, we often associate young people with the future. It's a truism. But, you know, young people actually also represent the present and not just the future. Just think about voting age, 16 years. Now, this is a suggestion that we came up with in France Insoumise. So we want young people to become more involved, to become more committed, to be more involved in decision-making and political processes. So that's an appeal. You should try to show even more commitment and engagement. You should become decision-makers yourself sooner or later, so that you can actually also have a say, greater say, when it comes to your countries. So the young people, they don't just represent the future, but the present. And in order to shape the present and the future, you should become even more involved, institutionally speaking. This is quite important. There's a huge challenge that we're facing. Now, and that's climate change. For us from France Insoumise, climate change really is a key issue, a key political issue. How can we actually overcome this challenge? It's a civilizational challenge, if you like. I mean, will it be a collective or an individual effort? Will we speak with a single voice or with different voices? And that's what the EU has to ask itself. Now, in a few days, of course, you know that COP26 will start in Glasgow, Scotland, and that's where these important challenges will be discussed as well. And then, of course, education. We want people to be educated, also technically speaking, so that we opt for the right decisions. We want people to be educated so that they can come up with economic systems that are more sustainable, ecologically speaking. And that's why we need to have experts, also in the field of agriculture, industry. Now, as far as we're concerned, we need to also change the way our public sectors are organized. So all of these, of course, are tasks that are ahead of us and that need to be accomplished. We need to find the right answers. Young people, of course, are key to all of this. So, discussions about the future of Europe. Well, that shouldn't be viewed separately from other issues, such as migration. Well, here too, this exchange has been very helpful. Now, the reality that your countries are facing is, of course, quite interesting. There is a brain drain. Educated young people leave countries. They're forced to leave. Now, for us from France Insoumise, it's important to make sure that migration is not considered a problem. Migration is also a richness, is also a source of inspiration. Now, France, for example, is a migration country. There have been many waves of migration, and those waves of migration have enriched France. So we should help all those who are forced to leave their countries or who want to go elsewhere to study or to work. And the visa issue is one that must be solved to make it possible for people to move abroad and to then return. So we should have study visas, and we should also have work permits that are issued more easily. People should have greater freedom in terms of moving to another country or moving back. So we are in favor of making it easier to obtain visas so that there is greater freedom of movement, that there is less rigidity, and we don't want people to live in precarious jobs. And I think that we should overcome the migration crisis. And because this will ultimately give rise to irregular migration, because people find it impossible to migrate safely to another country. That's why they opt for irregular migration, which is regrettable. So we should make it easier for people to work elsewhere, to study elsewhere. So this is an important issue for us to be solved. And then, of course, another issue that I'd like to touch on: why are people forced to leave their countries? Corruption, of course. The economic situation prevailing in your countries, yes. But when it comes to corruption, well, there are corrupt systems, but there are also corrupt people. So there are economic interests at play. So what is the responsibility? What about European interest groups? There are multiple actors. So we need to see things quite clearly. Also in terms of European financing, we need to really pinpoint those financing flows, because some European companies benefit greatly from subsidies, and those subsidies often don't go to your countries. So we should also try to nip corruption in the bud in our countries. And then finally, on the future of Europe.
I would say that this is less a question of accession and of having those countries who would like to be members of the Union than to have stability and balanced standards. Of course, the European Union is a reference, and it's also our responsibility to hold up to the promises in terms of human rights that we give. Within the European Union, however, we also have our own value crisis, a crisis with regard to what this contract we have in the EU really is. We have to find agreement between ourselves first, and only when that is done we can welcome new members. Because if we do both things at the same times, we're not going to succeed. The question is, what perimeter do we want to have? We have to conclude this new European contract or a new agreement at the EU level in terms of rights and liberties, freedoms, in terms of inegalities that have been growing in Europe. If you look at the situation of young people in France, for example, many young people have suffered greatly from the pandemic. And so within the European Union, I think we need to rethink our economic and social rules. The question of neoliberalism comes to mind, and this is linked to the tasks that I mentioned initially with regard to climate change. So there's a dialogue we have to have there, not just in order to know whether you are ready to join the European Union, but also to know which rules we want to have for the future European Union. Thank you very much, dear colleagues. Now, I have the difficult task to conclude and to summarize in a way what has been said today. First of all, let me thank Reinhold Lopatka warmly. You have been very dynamic as a chairperson. We couldn't have done without you. So thank you very much for organizing this. Thank you also to my French colleagues for having agreed to come here today and for having laid out the various points of view. I think it's very important to talk, to meet, and whether this is within the European Union or outside, we just don't know each other well enough yet. This is the case for you, your countries in the Western Balkans, but also for us, members of the European Union. Very often, I also see this in the French-German relationship, that we have different points of view, different cultures, and a different history. And the first thing to do is to get to know each other. And I think this is also something that's before you. You have the chance to go abroad, to study abroad. And this is something you should also give back to your countries. Bring back what you learned about what others think. And as you've seen from the various statements, even the European Union nowadays is looking for new references. The European Union as a structure is very young. It doesn't have any historical references. We don't have any legal references. We are sort of a hybrid organization which is still trying to find its place every day. Even the Conference on the Future of Europe, which has been tasked to find answers to the very simple but still very important question: what do we want to do together? What should we do together? What is it that we can no longer solve on our own? And so this is part of the questions we raise, even financial questions. You also said we have to invest more, but in a way, unfortunately, the European Union today is a giant without a solid base. we are missing the financial means to face all those challenges that we are faced with. I'm part of the executive committee for France within the conference on the future of Europe. And this is something that was mentioned also some weeks ago when I was in Strasbourg for the European Youth event. I don't know if some of you were present there too. I also wanted to start an idea there. We should make use of all the youth organizations we have in the European Union. If we want to reach something, if we want to obtain something, there are several pathways and you have to use them all. You have to use all the structures, the youth organizations in France, in Germany, in the Netherlands, because all of you have come to the same conclusions. You want to have a perspective in life, just like us. And you also want to approach questions around rule of law, justice systems, and so on in your countries. And these are questions we also discuss. And what's at the basis of all this? It's mutual trust. And that's something that we are missing currently. And we can only get back to trusting each other mutually if we work together on very specific questions. And maybe there is a road that can lead to finding a solution. We cannot just always ask why. We also have to find a methodology that will help us and that will help you. You have raised many questions also with regard to education and training. We have to invest in education and training, but not just in your education and training, but also in that of your teachers. And then recognition of diplomas, that's also something that's a very important point that we will have to raise at EU level. Then support when it comes to finding placements. We can maybe also use the exchanges we have among parliamentarians in Europe. We have the COSAC conference, the conference of EU committees of the European parliaments. And the fact that you see us here today is proof that we are interested in the questions you raised. We want to and we need to find a system that allows you to be more successful when you are looking for placements or internships. But of course, you too have to get moving. You cannot just sit and wait and hope that things are going to be laid out for you. You also have to contribute by using your voting rights in your countries. This is a responsibility that we share. It's our responsibility, members of parliament, Reinhard and others. We have to raise this at the EU level, and we hope to find short and medium-term solutions, because in the long run things are going to be even more complicated. As I said, the European Union is still trying to find its place. There are certain small things that come up every now and again, but this doesn't mean that we cannot find solutions for smaller questions too, and we have to discuss among each other. I think that can be done. This is something I would like to raise also during the French presidency. Maybe we can even create working groups which will deal with questions such as how can we mobilize our companies, how can we increase chances for internships, and so young people from the Western Balkans can use this opportunity and then also give something back to their own home countries. You and Frédéric also mentioned some of these questions. We also need to determine which competences we need. Education and training is one thing, but the other thing is determining what do we need to face challenges such as demographic challenges, climate change, and so on. So let me thank you all once again. I think it is of utmost important to continue talking with each other, and let me end by saying that it's always a pleasure to come back to Vienna. Thank you.